Drinking with Authors may contain adult content. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello! Welcome to Drinking with Authors. We love that we're doing these live now. This was supposed to happen last night, but if you ever heard that, if a tree falls in the woods, does anybody hear it? No, but power lines do go down. So eventually it's heard about. My guest today is Steve Altier. Welcome, Steve.
Oh, hi, Erica. Thank you for having me on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
Of course, you've been on with me once before, right?
Yes, we have. We've talked.
Yes. Awesome. Repeat guest. Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking a little bit. I'm going to open mine. So up here in North Carolina, there's a company called Flat Rock. I don't know if it's, okay, there we go, Flat Rock. And they do cider. So this one is their Blue Ridge blueberry one, which I'm very excited about. So what do you got, Steve?
Well, I'm not very adventurous, so I am drinking. I've got a bottled water from Zephyr Hills. I'm sorry, but that's my go-to.
You know, it's a little fancy. At least it's bottled water, not tap, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
So for anybody out there who may not know who you are, can you talk a little bit about who you are and what you write?
So I'm Steve Altier. I've been writing about 14 years now. I write paranormal, mystery, suspense. I've got a line of books called the Lizardville Ghost Stories and a few side stories to that as well. And I also write middle grade chapter books, just good wholesome stories for the young kids. It's more of a travel series, and I'm working on new ones all the time.
Awesome. So you've been on before. That's exciting, but you've been like massively hitting the con circuits recently, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to do 3 to 4 shows a month now. Not so much cons, but writing festivals, book festivals, bookstores, anywhere that, I can get my name out there and continue to grow.
And what's that been like?
It's been a lot of fun. Some of these shows have just been phenomenal lately. I mean, the crowds have been big. The people are still, picking up the copies of the books. I mean, I love that. And I think one of the greatest things I really enjoy is talking with the readers. I was at a show just a little north of Orlando back about 2 months ago. And the week prior to that, I had done a show up in Jacksonville, and I had a guy show up down there in just north of Orlando, and he goes, "Hey man, I sorry I couldn't get a chance to see you last weekend. I had to work, so I drove down here today because I knew you were going to be here." And I'm like, "Oh man, that was like really heartwarming when someone goes out of their way just to, drive an hour out of their way just to come and get your books." And then he really made my day when he says, "I'll take one of each." It's like, that's wonderful. So
I love that. We call that a unicorn, but I always think it's great when a reader gets to meet authors, and it's always smart to grab all the books, because if it's even close to something you like, you get the autographed copy. You could even get a picture with the author, which is, people love that. And I know us as authors, we're like, what? But people love hanging out with us, right?
I do the same thing. These authors, I mean, it's not just about selling books, but it's meeting other authors, meeting readers, meeting connections. And over the years, I mean, the past 14 years have been a journey, and it's been wonderful. I mean, yes, there's down days, but there's a lot of upside to all of this, and it's like a big family. I go to these shows, I'm going in to set up, and people come out, "Hey, how you doing, Steve?" And you recognize them, them. Authors you've met over the years, whether it's a comic book writer or just another author from mystery suspense, and I continue to grow my network of friends and family, and that's the way they are. It's like family to me. And to go have dinner with them in the evenings, things like that, it's such a wonderful thing.
That's awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the different things you write. So let's start with the middle grade chapter books. What made you decide to write a series that revolved around travel for middle grade kids?
Well, it all started, and I just rewrote that one recently, and the publisher, they've done the editing. I'm still waiting for some artwork to be done, but it's a Christmas story. And that was one of the first things I ever wrote. And I was really, it's like a privilege to go back and look at something that you've done 10 years ago and be able to rewrite it. Now, this new version of this story for the publisher is going to have about 6,000 new words in it. So it's the same storyline, but so much more. It's a lot better story, in my opinion, and it's a lot more depth to it. But that's what really sparked me off. And Gabby and Maddox are a brother and sister that go on these adventures. And it all started with we can't move at Christmas, that Christmas story I was talking about, when they had to move from Florida to Ohio. Otherwise, Dad was going to lose his job. And of course, at that time, the kids are like, we're moving at Christmas. We can't do that. How is Santa going to find us? Dad, real quick on his feet, was like, Santa's got this elite group of elves called the Family Moving Department, and they track kids moving all year long, and especially at Christmas. Santa's not going to forget you. But the kids go to great lengths. And I really enjoyed that story so much that I was able to turn it into, now the kids come back down to Florida to visit their grandparents. Grandpa worked for the Kennedy Space Center. So he was part of the children's astronaut program. So he got to take the kids up into outer space. I just enjoyed that adventure. And all of these stories, let me say this right now, all of these stories have a lot of facts in them. So there's a lot of facts about, the space. There's travel facts. Like another one of my stories was when they, over the falls, when they went to Niagara Falls. There's a lot of facts in there about the falls. So for a child from 6 to 10, they're about 80 to 100 pages long. There's a lot of illustrations in them as well, but there's fun facts they can learn. Plus, there's a lot of fun things that the kids do, on the side with their imagination running away with them. So it's just a good mix of everything. And then Adventures in Italy is another one, and I'm finishing up and getting ready to get that one over to the publisher soon. It's called the Mayan Curse, when the kids go to Mexico.
That's, what's neat about that too, though, for little kids is that, or younger people, I should say, because they're not really little, 6 to 10. At least a lot of them I know. What's really neat about that is a lot of kids don't get to travel. So this book also opens a world to them and some things to understand what other parts of the world are like and how other things operate. And I think we take for granted, it's always nice to have fantastical things for kids like the Narnia, right? But
yeah,
we don't all have magic wardrobes that we can go into. Thus far, I've surveyed quite a bit on this point. Nobody has a magic wardrobe to Narnia yet that I've encountered. I know. So it's nice when it's like real travel and they can understand what those things are like to do, right? And not just fantastical, a magic genie takes them to Italy. No, right?
Right. Well, like in that one in particular, I mean, the kids getting on an airplane for the first time and traveling like that, and what's wrong with my ears, and just little things that pop out to me whenever I've traveled. But the kids experience it for the first time. That, I think, that kind of sheds some light on some things for the younger generation too.
That's awesome. Okay, and then your other series revolves around the paranormal and ghosts, right?
Correct. And it was a funny story. I was at a Barnes and Noble doing a book signing a few years back, and which one I was? It was Blast Off that had just released, and there was a group of teenage boys come up to me. Now, and we all know how teenagers can sometimes be a little mean, but the guy came up to me, he looked at me, and he goes, "Oh man, this is baby stuff. What you got for me, man?" And I didn't know what to say. I really did not. I'm just like, I really don't have anything unless you're interested in, like, a 10-year-old book, maybe a 12-year for if you're 12. But he was like, "No, I'm like 15, man. I can't read this stuff." So it really got me thinking. And I was talking with a friend of mine in Pennsylvania. Now, I grew up in a small town called Mill Hall, but I lived on Lizardville Road. So that friend of mine made a comment to me. He goes, "How many people can say they grew up in Lizardville?" And that's when it hit me. That's what I need to be writing about. I can write good, clean stories. I don't use cuss words. They're not gory. They're just that spine-tingling, edge of your seat suspense that'll keep you guessing. And I try not to, overdo it with that, but just good, wholesome stories for the young ones. And they're more like for the 12, 13 and up group. I know a lot of adults that have read those books. They've all said the same thing. Oh man, that took me back to my childhood. They loved it. And I'm like, well, that's great. So to me, it's a book for all ages. If you just like good mystery, suspense, adventures.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it really is, because I think that it's sort of a different take. A lot of times I think we go really drastically into horror and things like that. And, younger kids, I shouldn't say kids, I would say younger adult people, like before teenagers. I'm not even using my words. Welcome to Cider. It's fine. I think there's a whole area of people that want to read those, and there is not necessarily a huge amount that jumps between, the middle school grade books and then young adult books, which tend to have more racy topics in them, right?
Yeah, I mean, I read a lot of young adult stuff, and the fantasy is just, it floors me sometimes to think that, 15 or 16-year-old may be reading some of this. I mean, the one that comes to mind, and I won't mention the author or the name of the book, but there was a 16-year-old girl assassin, and she's making out with, the head of the guard, and, she's out killing for the king and bringing back heads and tossing them into, there it is, there's his head. And you're like, and this author is describing all of this. I'm like, wow, is this what young adult stuff is? And so, I mean, if you're a parent, I'd be really double checking some of the things that your child is reading. And if you approve of it, that's wonderful. But
I think it's important to do that anyway, because we can put it in any genre, right? We can put a book in any genre. We could say it's something that it's not, right? Because nobody's looking to go wait until somebody complains to a retailer, and then they'll go, wait a minute, is this actually this kind of book, right?
Right.
So what is the latest in the Lizardville stories that's out?
So the latest one is Return to Lizardville. That's the newest one, just released on May 16th.
Do you have a copy of it? Can you show us copies?
I've got one right here behind me.
There you go. We want to see the books. Look at, there it is. That's awesome.
Yeah, one of the things that the publisher started doing, which a lot of people don't realize on these hardcovers, but if you take the jacket off, you get the artwork.
That's cool.
It's amazing. I love it. I don't know how many people see these at my shows or whenever I'm out doing book signings, and they look at those and they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And they're like, yeah, I want that one instead of the paperback. So it's a really top quality product that my publisher's been doing for me. And I love it. I really do.
That's awesome.
In particular, it's just, it blew me away. I described what I was looking for, and on the very first shot, the artist just nailed it.
That's very cool. So what is this one about? Where does this one take us? Because it's book 3. So where is it taking us?
So let me go back just a bit. The first book was The Camping Trip, which was set in the 1970s. And it's Dad, he's telling his, there's a power outage in the middle of a storm going on. The power goes out. He's sitting there with his, 12 and 13-year-old sons. And they're like, what are we going to do? There's no power. My phone died. Dad's like, well, we could read a book. And they're like, yeah, really? So Dad starts telling him what it was like when he was a kid growing up in the 70s. And that's where this book takes place, in the 1970s. And it's John talking about his childhood and explaining to them, what it was like without all the electronics and things like that. But they were out on a weekend camping trip, him and his buddies. And the oldest guy, he wants to scare all the newcomers to the group. So he tells them the legends of the Axe Factory murders, which wakes up the spirit world. And that's when the chaos starts. And in book 2 of that, it's called Jimmy's Curse. The kids are still out looking, trying to figure out, how do we get these, we've survived book 1, but now how do we get these ghosts and the spirits back where they belong? And that's what they're really trying to accomplish. And, there's, without any real spoilers, I can't give it away at the end of that, but in this one, Return to Lizardville, book 3, John and Sarah, high school sweethearts, got married after school and moved away. They wanted to forget the past. And now as adults, they're going back with their own children, which are now 20 years old, in their 20s, and they're going back. It's more present day, and they go back for a family reunion back in town. And their boys, the 20-year-olds and their girls, they decide, like, Dad's got to be, just pulling our leg. These were just stories. They're not real. But they go out into the woods searching for answers. Well, they've bitten off more than they can chew when they wake up the spirits again. So it's another fun ride, but this one comes full circle. There was someone left a review on Goodreads, like, I didn't think there would be a book 3 in this series, but I'm glad there was. It really tied up every loose end. And they said, they recommended it. They said it was a must read, and it was 5 stars. So I was thrilled to see that.
No, that's awesome. So you read your reviews, huh? Because not a lot of authors do that.
I glance here and there. It was a 5-star review. It just kind of popped up out of nowhere, and I saw it, and I'm like, why not? If they enjoyed it. I also look at some of the bad ones too, because, like, what did I do wrong, and how can I fix that in another story?
Yeah, well, sometimes you did nothing wrong in the reviews, and it's just not the book for that person,
Yeah, that may be the case. I mean, sometimes they'll say, well, I think some of the characters lacked. Okay, then I'll work on my character development better. But that was, like, earlier in my career, I used to focus on some of that stuff. But I don't really dive into my reviews that often. This one just kind of jumped out.
No, I love positive reviews. I think reviews can be so much fun. You just have to have the thick skin of knowing that you're not really talking to or hearing from necessarily a person so much as somebody who is able to do something from behind a screen. It's great. I think reviewing books is important. It's just, if it's not something you liked and it's not your genre, unless it's for a technical reason, like the author kept switching tenses, that's something you could say. But otherwise, why put a review up other than, I read the book, I liked it, this was good, that was bad, that was bad. I've seen some of them, and I'm just like, that person just wrote an entire paper on that book. So they should be a writer themselves. So let's talk about, if you were to cast your stories. Have you thought about that at all? If you were to cast Lizardville?
Yeah, I've been asked this question before, and I mean, that's every writer's dream, to have something turn into a television show or a movie, things like that. There are a couple of people I've had in mind. Like, for the male roles, I kind of thought, like, I always liked Spider-Man, and especially Tom Holland. He was really good. But, these are supposed to be teenagers. How do you make someone like that? I mean, is he too old now to be a teenager? But I would love Tom Holland to be in there as one of them. There was a guy that was on Cobra Kai. I'm trying to think of his name. Tanner Buchanan or something like that. He was another one. I really thought he was good. It's on the new Cobra Kai stuff that's out.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of ladies too, like, I believe Zendaya.
Oh yeah.
I think, wasn't she in the Spider-Man with Tom Holland?
She plays MJ in Spider-Man.
Yeah. She was really good too as well. I liked her. I can't think of the guy's name, but it was Tom Holland's best friend in that. He was another one that I thought was really good. Or even like Selena Gomez. Always looks so young.
Oh yeah. No, she's great in Only Murders in the Building. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Oh, you should watch that. If you haven't seen it, it is very well written, and she's amazing in it.
Awesome. All right. And you said, what was the name of that again?
It's called Only Murders in the Building, and it's got Steve Martin and Martin Short.
Yeah, I saw previews there. That's on Hulu, right?
Yeah, it's really good. They do a very good job. Yeah. Okay, so what are you currently reading? You say you read a lot. What are you currently reading? Or what's a really good book that you've read recently?
I just got this one recently. It's Suzanne Collins' new book, Sunrise on the Reaping. And I haven't, so if you've read it, please don't tell me because I'm only like 40 pages in. I just picked this one up
I won't
recently.
tell you. It's very well done, though. I enjoy it.
Somebody said it was really sad, and I was
Well,
like, okay, but I mean, that's everybody has their own take. I've heard people tell me stuff. Oh, this book's horrible. Don't want to read it. I read it. I'm like, I loved it.
no,
So
I think when you're looking, I mean, all know how Hamish ends up, right? We know that he gets broken, very much like Katniss got broken after I mean, everybody who goes through this thing, and even, I mean, did you read the other one, the Song of Snakes and Birds, or whatever the hell that one about snow was? Yeah.
yes,
That's another one. Like, I think she did a fantastic job of not breaking the existing lore, right?
right.
And, but you see how he broke from it too. Like, how he kind of turned into a complete baddie.
Yep. Well, see, and she's one of my inspirations too, because like when I started writing the Lizardville Ghost Stories, I know it's a 3-book series, it's complete now, but I also wrote a couple of side stories, at the same time, so that way I could release one of in the series of the Lizardville Ghost Stories. But I also released like Old Man Smithers, which is a character that we meet, and I didn't want to wait until the series was done and then take a 2 or 3 year hiatus and then release another book. I wanted to keep everybody into that same universe.
No, it makes sense, and I think it's great. I love that. Also, I love hearing that your fans thought that you wrapped it up well, because there are sometimes we get, unfortunately for some authors, their books don't get to finish, and we don't get that final book that's supposed to like end things, and then we're like, what the hell happened? Like, it was an Empire Strikes Back type ending. Where is it going from here? So, what is like your writing process like when you're trying to pull these stories out? Is there like an exact way you have to do it, or can you write anywhere? Like, what is your writing methodology?
So a lot of people, I mean, everyone has their own thing. So for me, probably this year I've become a full-time writer. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but my process, but still trying to find myself, I should say. But I get up in the morning. Once my wife has left and gone to work, then I go for a walk, about a 2.5 mile walk every morning. Even though it's getting hot now, but I still do my walk in the morning. It gets my mind thinking, and I'm starting to focus not so much on the walk, but on my stories and what can I do today. Trying to get if I have like a thought or an idea that jumps out at me, I'll grab my phone and start talking into it and making sure I don't forget what I'm thinking. But I'm usually home by 9 o'clock, and I sit down. I try to write for at least 3 to 4 hours before I have lunch. Take a little bit of a break, and then my afternoons I focus on, on my marketing stuff and creating, things for social media, posts like that. But my writing process. I mean, I used to be more of a pantser. For those that don't know what a pantser is, that's someone who has an idea and just starts writing and flies by the
That's
seat.
me. I'm 100% a pantser. I try.
And that's how I started. I had ideas, I had thoughts, and I tried to be, and I was like a pantser. But I found that as I got deep into a story, I struggled sometimes to continue it. So I've started trying to write like a paragraph, somewhat of a plot, but a paragraph for each chapter. Now I might write 25 paragraphs out. This is the things that I want to happen. And when you're writing, sometimes it takes a left turn, a right turn. It can be a U-turn, but it just takes you in a different direction. Sometimes the characters, and I love it when it happens, when they start talking to you. I can almost visualize the scene, what's happening in these stories. And that's when writing becomes fun and easy. You're just sitting here and writing. But my goal is I'm shooting for like 1,000 words a day. Right now I'm hitting more like 15 to 1,800 words a day. I'm trying to do, a manuscript every 3 to 4 months. When I do and I'm going to write a a young adult novel, and then I'm going to write a middle grade, and then go back to young adult. The one I'm currently putting the finishing touches on is more of an adult psychological thriller. It's taken on a supernatural aspect toward the end here, so I guess it's going to be like a supernatural thriller. But it was something I've been wanting to do. This story has been eating at me for a long time, and I finally, got the blessing to go ahead and run with it. It's a standalone story, but I've been doing some thinking about that. It's about, and if I'm allowed to drop it, I will. The title I want it to be A Woman in the Mirror, or The
That
Woman.
sounds creepy. Just the title alone sounds terribly creepy. So,
But yeah, and this woman, she's going through all these problems in her life, but it's like a relic that she's found. And doing a lot of this research, I was stunned to find out that mirrors, I didn't know this, but a mirror has to be more than 100 years old. One of these stand-up encased in wood mirrors has to be over 100 years old in order to be an antique. I
yeah.
didn't know. So it's been, some of the research has been fantastic for me. I'm learning constantly about different things, but I had an idea. And there was a guy at a show we were talking about. He asked me what I was working on. I told him, and he's like, "Oh, that's exciting! I can't wait to get a copy of that." And he asked me if there would be a second one, and I'm like, "No, it's more of a standalone." And he goes, "Well, it's like a relic." And he goes, "You could write the relic series and different relics that are turned up over time, and people encounter them, and different things happen." So I said, well, yeah, I could. This one's a mirror. Maybe the next one will be a teapot. That somebody finds at their grandmother's house after she's passed away. I mean, I don't know. So I'm still on the fence. Should I turn this into a series or not? I will be talking with the publisher about it, see what their opinion is.
I think that's neat. And I think it's neat when you get, I get so many of my ideas from people watching, like just seeing things happen. Of course, in my mind, I'm like, how can this go wrong? I don't want it to go wrong for the people I'm watching, but in my mind, I go, how can this go wrong? Right. But I think it's interesting, especially when fans go, yeah, that sounds great. So you're going to make a bunch of them, right?
Yeah.
You want to have them say that and not go, oh, cool.
The one problem I have is I can't write fast enough to keep some of these people happy. It's like, when's the next story? Okay, you just bought the new one. Yeah, but I'll be done in a week. And
you're lucky they'll be done in a week. Sometimes they're done in a day. And then you're like, I always say that because I think sometimes there's a definite thought when authors go, gosh, I'm going so fast. I'm getting so much done. Like you're shooting for getting a book a quarter, basically, right? So you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. It'll be great, whatever. But then your readers are like, cool. So I finished that on day one. So what else do you have for me? Yeah. And it takes somebody like you right now have what, 9 books or something? How many books do you have out?
Yeah, 9.
Yeah. And so it takes somebody, potentially maybe a month to get through all 9 of your books, hypothetically, right? But then they're like, cool. And you're like, that's years worth of work. That's years I spent doing that. And they're like, yeah. So when's the next one coming?
Yeah, there's more than just writing. I mean, like I said, there's research, there's plotting things out, and then there's research. What do I got to do about this mirror? I got to learn about mirrors, and then I have to learn more about supernatural elements that happen. I want to get some of the terminology right. I've gone on a few professional ghost hunts with some professional teams recently, just to try to learn more and educate myself on the topics that I write. And I've been reading a little bit more on those topics. So it's fascinating, but there's more to goes into it than just writing a story. It's all the plotting the week or two before, and then you write your story. Now that you know how it starts and ends, now you have to go back and rewrite it, and that's when you get really creative. So there's more than just writing. I mean, everyone's like, oh, you sit down and write a story. I wish it was that easy. The editing process, because I can't turn in a piece of crap. I have to edit it myself. And then my wife goes through it. I work sometimes with my daughter. She's an avid reader, and she gives me a lot of constructive criticism. She's like one of my worst critics, my best critics, worst critics.
Best, worst, it depends on the day. And,
yeah. She'll come back. What did you do that for? I can't believe you did that. I hate that guy. Then 2 days later, I love him. He's so cool. I'm like, at least I'm tugging on some emotions.
No, and I think you touched on something there. You touched on two things I want to go back to because I want to hear about the ghost hunt. But talking about research, I think a lot of people don't realize that responsible authors have a lot of research, even if it's back into their own world that they've created, because you don't want to break a system, a person, a thing you have in place, because readers will catch that, especially because sometimes they grab your first book and they read all for 3 of them or 5 of them, for instance, and they're going to see anytime you messed up some part of the lore of your area. They're just going to see it. Plus, I think because you write existing worlds. I mean, you have the paranormal, but you're writing in like this town, but it's based on the town you grew up in and things like that, right? So you're writing the real world, quote unquote. So there's some rules you can't break, and you don't want to go, you can do A and B. So you do have to spend some time. Like the antique question. If you were like, she looked into the 25-year-old antique mirror, your readers would be like, what? Like, that's not an antique. So I think it's an underestimated area is the rewriting and the research and getting it through beta readers and other people who give you feedback. And sometimes you go, son of a bitch, and have to go rewrite something,
Well, and I'll give you a great example. When I first wrote The Camping Trip, I was a big, one of the characters, his name is Parker. He wanted to be an astronaut. He actually wanted to be like Luke Skywalker. He used to go to the stone quarry at night and lay on the big boulders and stare into the sky. And my wife, when she read that, she's like, what year is this? I said, 1974. She said, Star Wars wasn't out yet. You can't say Luke Skywalker. I'm not I watch, Star Wars because she's a big fan, but I'm not a big fan like she is. I do like.
I'm glad she corrected that, because as somebody who was at the premiere at the Chinese Man Theater when I was 3 years old, Star Wars, I would have been like, that is wrong.
Exactly. And, that's the first thing she goes, that's wrong. Mm-mm. So now he just looks into the stars wanting to be an astronaut, but it was like, thank you. Because I didn't realize, I know that the first book came out like in 76 because I have a copy of it now, but it was like, man, how do you make mistakes?
And that's the thing, is that we talk about something that's small, right? Appears small. One sentence you're saying in the book, right? But we as authors have the responsibility to go, wait a minute, when did that come out? And when did that happen? And I know I've talked to, of course, I'm drinking with authors. I mean, I'm drunk some of the time, but it doesn't matter. I talk to authors, and one of the things that I think is hysterical, right, is we have to go back and go, wait, when was this invented? Because especially for those of us who've lived a number of years, like you and I, Steve, we went through we went through not having cell phones, and we went through when pagers were a big deal, and the car phone and the big brick phone, and we remember these things, but you have to go, wait a minute, when the hell was that? Right? When did that occur? When did this come out? When was beta versus VHS? I know there are some people watching this going, what? But in the great videotape wars, there was a beta player and a VHS player. That's what they were called. They were 2 different tape sizes. Beta was actually better, but VHS won. I know it's dumb, but you have to go back and look to see when that occurred, because there was definitely that changeover where it mainstreamed, right? And then when did it go to DVD? Because it didn't go to DVD. It went to Laserdisc, which looked like a giant effing record, right? And I remember a friend of mine thought he was so cool because he had all these laser discs. And who's laughing now, my friend? It's we don't think about these little things, but you have to, because you can't go, well, in 1991 I was blah. That didn't exist in 1991. That band wasn't out. She was listening to this song, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but readers can know that because that might be their favorite song or their favorite band. And they'll be like, wait a minute, that was issued 3 years later. That'll throw reader out of the story. It'll immediately throw reader out of the story. So anyway.
Oh, absolutely. I went through that with when I wrote The Ghost Hunter. That's set in the 1960s. And these guys are going out on ghost hunts. They're college guys that go on ghost hunts. And, I started to write, like, hey, they've got these, cassette recorders. And I'm like, were they even around yet? Were portable cassette recorders available? So I went and did my research. And yes, they were getting popular at the time. But
I was going to say, were they, or was it 8-tracks? Because see, there's another one. 8-tracks. 8-tracks were the popular thing in cars too for the longest time.
Well, I think as it was a kid, we all had one of them. It was about the size of maybe about half the size of a shoebox, and you just pressed it and it would pop up. You'd put a cassette in it, and you'd sit there all day waiting for your favorite song to play on the radio just so you could record it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, we go down such a rabbit hole, Steve, of talking about the ways we recorded TV shows and our favorite movies that was illegal at the time. So let's not talk about that and get us in trouble.
Okay.
What about, let's talk about ghost hunting, because you went to one of, I do Eerie Travels podcast too, and Mark Muncie, who's my co-host, loves the May Stringer house. Loves it. He has a videotaped actual paranormal experience there. What happened with you at the May Stringer house, which is in Brooksville? Anybody listening, if you want to go see it, you can do private ghost hunts and they do tours and stuff. And it's one of the most haunted places in Florida, legitimately. But what happened with you?
So I went there. This is the second time I've been there. I met Rob and Joan. They are the organizers for the Tampa Bay Spirits Paranormal Investigation Team. I met them a couple years ago at a book signing. We were both in the same bookstore together. They have some books about their stories that they've written and some of their experiences. So I got to talking with them. They were fascinated with my work. Of course, I told them my stuff's fictional. And we were finally able, last year, I was able to go on a ghost hunt with them. And it really wasn't what I expected. People say, oh, you see something, this and that. But they're long hours of just sitting there with nothing. But there was one thing that happened last year, and then I'll get into this year's, because this was something else this time. But my wife and I were there, and we were upstairs, or we were downstairs. The team was upstairs. It was getting close to midnight, and we were. She was tired. Her back was bothering her. She's like, I really want to go home. And it's an hour drive from Brooksville to where I live. So I'm like, all right, let me say goodbye to the team. And I just don't want to walk out, I got to go up and say goodbye. So we went upstairs, and they were in the middle, they were in a room, but they were doing the Estes method. And I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's when they have someone blindfolded and they've got the headphones on with the white noise going. So, and if you hear words, you repeat them. So we walked into that room, and the woman that was doing the Estes method, she just blurted out of nowhere, "Get her home."
Wow.
And I'm like, what? How did she know that? And I'm like, the hairs on my arm were just standing up.
I know. I was going to say, I just got goosebumps. That's creepy.
But so on May 10th, I was invited back. We went back up with the same team, and they had a couple more sensitive people there this time. But it was a unique night. There was thunderstorms in the area. The electricity was everywhere in the air. When we got there, the docents were telling us that there's a lot of activity going on. So when I I helped them set up some of the cameras in the rooms. They'd set up some of the REM pods upstairs. And when the lady who set one of them up in the attic, she was like, if you would like us to come up here and talk with you, just set this off and we'll be up. We'll come up and talk with you.
Oh,
So,
Mr. Nasty, huh? She was trying to bait him because he's the one in the attic, right?
well, we ended up talking with Mr. Saxon. And then Gary made an appearance a little bit later. Gary,
That's who I'm talking about. Our lovely. I know some people call him Gus, some people call him Gary. A lot of people call him Mr. Nasty because he can be unpleasant to deal with depending on his mood.
he was in a funny mood, but when we got there, this REM pod is going off like crazy upstairs. So they actually had to turn it off, and they set up some flashlights. They set up some cat balls on the floor, and we just sat there and we were talking. And the one lady, she's a sensitive. She started asking questions, and then the flashlight came on, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" That she was asking questions. There was about a 50-minute session when they were talking with Mr. Saxon, and he was answering our questions. You know, and there was one question that was asked, and I have all of this on video. I haven't got it all uploaded. I've been putting a few of them out there at a time. I'm going to be uploading all of them to my website shortly, but I've been putting them on YouTube as well. But there was one question, and for a lot of people that may not know this, I believe it was Jessie May. She passed away when she was like 3 years old, and when Mr. Saxon was her dad. So they had asked him if it was an accident, and he did not turn on the flashlight. They, waited and waited and waited, and then she said, "Well, was, could this have been avoided if somebody was watching him?" That flashlight came on quick.
Wow.
So, and it just like, it freaked me out. So, and the mood changed. I mean, everything there changed after that. It was like, it went from like just a good question and answer session to like, now it was like somber and everyone was, ready to cry. I mean, we've all heard the stories of how this young girl possibly fell down the stairs, but, was she pushed, or were they playing around, and just because there wasn't anyone there supervising her, that it could have been avoided. But we kind of have a little bit of proof on that. And I even zoomed in on the flashlight, when you can hear the questions in the background and the light coming on and off, and you're like, there's nobody touching that light. And the hairs on my arm were standing up, and, we just had a wonderful night. The activity was phenomenal. Even when we were doing the Estes method later on, the light was off. I think we wore the poor fella out. It takes a lot of energy to turn the lights on and off. But we had a fantastic night. I am a soul believer. It was really fantastic. I look forward to going back with them again. Definitely worth the drive. Definitely worth going to check out the May Stringer House in Brooksville, Florida. They do tours in the evening, like from 8 to 10. Because I'm with a professional group, they do the private tour. The docents are there, but they stay in their little gift shop and they don't bother us. And some of the stories we heard and from them and some of the things that we saw that night were just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It is a hot spot. I've done the tours and been there, and yeah, it is definitely. I can't wait to see those videos. But okay, so we're getting near the end, Steve. What shameless self-promotion would you like to do?
Oh man, buy my books now.
I love it.
I tell you, my works anywhere books are sold. They are on ebook, audiobook, paperback, hardcovers, and I even showed you the hardcovers. If you haven't seen the hardcovers, all the hardcovers are the same way. When you remove the jacket, it's like a virgin cover. You get the artwork with no writing, and it's a nice, soft, velvety type finish. And they're just, and it's front and back. It's just phenomenal work. But these books are sold anywhere books are sold. You can get them on my website, stevealtier.com. That's Steve, ALTIER.com. You can order signed copies from me there. If you want it personalized, send me a message along with it, and I will get them out to you. And you can check out my blog, my calendar there. My calendar is, I try to do 3 or 4 appearances, and I've got some coming up in July. We're going to be hitting a lot of spots up in Georgia. We're starting off in Savannah. We'll finish off a week later in Atlanta. And then later on, we're going to be up in the Midwest. We've got an appearance up there in St. Louis. And I'm still trying to book a few more spots up in the North, in the Midwest later on.
Awesome. And is your website the best way to find how to get you on Instagram and all these other fun socials?
Yeah, all my socials are there. You can also find me on Linktree. I've got everything posted up there as well. But you'll mainly find me on Facebook, Instagram, and I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I do have a couple of other platforms like X. I post a few things here and there, and Pinterest, and I think it's Tumblr. But I do have a TikTok page. I'm still trying to feel my way around all of that. If you haven't figured it out,
aren't we all, Steve? Aren't we all?
If you haven't figured out, I don't like to talk on camera.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. And of course, in the show notes is all of Steve's information, so you can check it out and check out the Lizardville and also the Gabby and Maddox, and follow him for all the great stuff coming up, because it's Creepy Mirrors. I'm already creeped out about it, and I don't even know any more of the stories. So that's good enough. So Steve, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, Erica, thank you for having me. And I just want to say one thing. This new story, now that I'm dedicating 100% of my time to writing, I just feel like this is my best work yet. I really do. I'm from morning to night, that's all I'm doing is writing and thinking about writing. So I'm loving this story, and I hope the readers find it, as appealing as I do.
I am sure they will, because one thing you're doing is passion. And with that, friends, don't forget to like, subscribe, and pay attention to Drinking with Authors. Get all of Steve's books quickly, and then you can reach out to him and say, where's the next one? Because apparently he loves hearing that. And with that, guys, we'll see you next time on Drinking with Authors.
Thank you for listening to Drinking with Authors. Join us next time for another fun conversation with an author over drinks.